I can't do this alone. A ton of humility, a ton of asking questions to God, a ton of how do I get through this? The way I describe mental toughness is how quickly you shift from feelings to focus. I guess it just doesn't hurt enough yet. Limiting beliefs have one prerogative in your life: to keep you safe. The hero and the villain have the same backstory. Encouraging my clients to look at their fuel source. You can go to the gas station, fill up with 87 or 93. And what's the difference? They're both gasoline. What's the difference? Well, I think 93 has a little bit more. The word mental is probably one of the biggest stigmatized words ever. If somebody was seen as mental, you went to the other sidewalk. You didn't just go to the other side of the same sidewalk, you went to the other sidewalk to stay away from somebody that was mental. To me, the word mental means focus. Emotional is feelings. When we talk about mental health, mental performance, emotional health, emotional performance, we're talking about how do you shift from your feelings to focus, using your anger to go get something, not just go get something, to serve other people along the way. This podcast episode is sponsored by Whoop, the wearable technology that I wear every single day. We will put the discount code in the show notes, and one other, Thorn Health Tech, which are the products that I take to take my performance to the very next level. They're NSF certified for sport, highest quality, potency, and purity, also in the show notes. So without further ado, let's dive in.
All right, Mark, for your audience to get to know you a little bit better, we're going to dive into some questions about Mental Health Awareness Month and how you view these things. So let's start by just asking, what was your own turning point for prioritizing mental awareness for yourself?
Everybody has an origin story. I think when I talk about mental health, the origin story of that in my life was right around 17 years old. I was North Jersey Player of the Year in lacrosse, coming off of a record high school spout, and I written up in all these different magazines and newspapers. And Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you, and you'll believe them." And I was believing it. I was reading and believing everything that was written about me. I was young. I just didn't know. I thought I had self-awareness, but I didn't have it. 18 years old, on pace to beat that record, and I get stress fractures in my lower back, my L2 and my L4. That put me in a brace from my pecs to my tailbone. And a few months into that, my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. And not only did I feel physically weak, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually weak as well. And I remember that being the introduction in my life that I can't do this alone. A ton of humility, a ton of asking questions to God, a ton of how do I get through this? And as I share with the young clients that I work with, I didn't know it at the time, but visualization and writing was really helpful for me. And it turns out that those are sports psychology strategies. I didn't know it. I didn't have a name for it, but I knew that when I did those things, it made me feel better.
What was the hardest part about that season of your life?
Probably overwhelm. In the dictionary, there's a word called oaf, O-A-F. It means a clumsy person. I find those three, overwhelm for O, anger for A, and fear for F, to be the three things that makes people a clumsy person. And at that time in my life, it was overwhelm. Definitely fear as well, questioning what's going to happen to the woman I love most here, and a lot of anxiety about that. So I think it was just, the word overwhelm means to be engulfed by. It was just a bunch of things happening over and over and over again. And I'll steal this from a great thought leader. I believe she has a company called Precision Nutrition, Dr. Krista Scott Dixon. She said change happens after 1,000 paper cuts. And I definitely think that's tied to the overwhelm that I was feeling at 18 years old.
So 18 years old, I want to know who was around Mark at that time, and how much does your inner circle affect your mental health, and how do you protect your energy?
It's a phenomenal question, because when I reflect back on my life now, something that I point to is the power of role models, mentors, and having a personal board of advisors, very experienced individuals who have scraped their knees, learned, lost, regalvanized, found redemption in whether that's their craft or their field. And then looking back on it, I really felt I had a strong inner circle as well. People are always looking to be psychologically safe. Psychological safety is basically another term for trust, faith, and confidence. But when I feel supported, then I can go after something. And the best way I've ever heard it described was by Gabor Mate when he said, it's not the absence of threat, but the presence of connection. So, even though my mom was going through her bout through cancer, I was staying very close to her. My sister is one of my best friends in my life. My father has always been that number one role model ever since I could walk. So I had a strong family center. My friends were there. I share this. It's part of the reason why I have the Meaningful Growth Foundation now, my 501c3 that provides direct, timely financial aid to cancer patients, is because friends and strangers alike were showing up at our doorstep to give us food and dinner at night. And that gives you the power of hope. And when you have the power of hope, you can look up and out. And then I'd be totally remiss if I didn't say that breakdown led to a breakthrough in my spirituality. How? It brought me closest to God. And when I think you're going through different chapters of your life and you're humbled by life, you find the humility, whether that brings you to your knees or you get closer to the soil or closer to the ground, where you start looking up at the one thing that matters. And that's the connection that mattered most for me.
During any of that time, did you resist seeking help?
The way I describe mental toughness is how quickly you shift from feelings to focus. The way that pertains to the question you asked is, it took me too long of a time to reach out for help beyond the prayer and meditation that I was doing alone. My mom had her own battle going on, and my sister and father were coping with it their own way. I still communicated with them, but it was kind of all hands on deck. And I think a lot of people feel this way. I don't want to express it because it's not about me, especially if you're empathetic and you're just like, how can I serve other people? So I think at that time, looking back on it, it probably took me too long. It wasn't until, fast forward, I'm a junior at Yale University, that we had a mental performance coach. And I said, whoa, that's what I needed years ago. So I wouldn't say it was years to ask for help, to be vulnerable, but it was certainly months, And now, as I've aged, because you can get older yet not wiser, I have found the wisdom, which wisdom being the next right thing you could do, to being like, okay, I don't feel great. Let me connect with the Lord or someone in my personal board of advisors. I don't know why this is coming to mind, but I heard recently from the couples therapist, Esther Perel. She said, back in the day, if you really look at it, the word soulmate meant God. It's like, that's interesting. And I think people go to either their partner or a friend for everything, rather than, I know who to go to if I want to talk about a speaking engagement. I know who to go to if I want to talk about relationships. I would know who I want to go to if one of my clients is going through a panic attack. Like, where am I going to get certain information from? And I think rather than attempting to get it so much from one individual, having that connectivity is super important. What does that have to do with answering your question? I started to see that there was way more pleasure in vulnerability rather than pain from that experience. Took me a while to go ask for help then. Now it's almost as easy as doing everything else in my life.
Did you know you were hurting during those times between the beginning of the height of your 17-year-old lacrosse season and when you began getting help? Were you aware enough to know I'm at some level not doing okay? Yes or no?
No. The story that comes to mind, and I love this because we're going to be releasing this during the summer, and I remember going as a kid down to the New Jersey shore with my family, and the story is about a young boy down the New Jersey shore that's on a deck that's just been renovated. He's sitting there next to his dog, and the dog is whimpering and crying, and the neighbor goes, "Hey kid, what's up with the dog?" Looks at the dog, looks over at the neighbor and says, oh, they just renovated the deck, and I think there's some screws and nails still sticking up. I think he's sitting on a nail. And the neighbor goes, well, why doesn't he just move? The boy looks at the dog, then looks over at the neighbor and goes, I guess it just doesn't hurt enough yet. And I think that story is very pertinent from invisible injuries, mental health, because if you get a compound fracture, everyone sees that. Your bone's snapped, you know? It's really hard to look at the screen when you're watching a sporting event and somebody goes through a compound fracture like that. A lot of players can play through a grade 1 ankle sprain, right? There's no difference between physical and mental, right? One reflects into the other. So when we talk about physical prowess, I think you're going to find more mental confidence, right? You see these individuals who take on a 5K, a 10K, a marathon, nowadays a lot of the ultra marathon, and satisfaction comes after worthwhile suffering. So I think, no, I didn't know because it didn't hurt enough yet, you know? And if something doesn't like really break you down like a compound fracture, it actually does build resilience. So it's like, I got that. I'm building capacity. But after a while, things are just going to start to bend to the point where they snapped. And I think that was one breaking point.
So the question I want to ask is, why do so many people resist seeking help? But when I hear you say that, I go, well, maybe I know I need help, but because suffering over time is going to breed resilience, maybe I should just suffer a little bit longer. Maybe I don't need to seek help. Maybe it's not bad enough. So I don't know if there's two different thoughts there, but why do people struggle seeking help? And is it healthy to go, I'm going to stay in the suck or the pain for the purpose of, well, the longer I just tough this out and feel the pain, maybe the better I'll be.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Are people more prone to take vitamins or medication, right? We tend to do things to get ourselves out of extreme pain, right? An individual that's got a test coming up, they don't cram the night before to get an A. They cram the night before to not get an F. And that's a major thing to understand about human psychology. So even when we're talking about get help, okay, to me it's too blanket of a word, right? Because from a performance coach perspective, the individuals that come to me, it's not underneath the condition model. They don't have generalized anxiety or depression or worse. Therefore, it's not through insurance, right? I think that's a huge separating factor to understand. But help means different things to different people. When I reach out for help nowadays, it's always usually for performance enhancement. And if you do things so often, right, then you actually don't need the major help that I think was in your question right there, right? The major help where the house is on fire, call the firefighters, right? It's when did someone become ultra wealthy? One day at a time and then all at once. When did somebody become bankrupt? One day at a time and then all at once. That's the Matthew principle. So I think I just have a positive connotation for the word help. I have a positive connotation for the word stress, and I have a positive connotation for the word therapy. Therapy, to me, is support plus rapport plus insight. You do that with your best friends. You feel supported, the rapport is there, and then hopefully people are open enough to provide insight to each other, right? So lights are turning on. Oh, I didn't look at it that way. That's cool. But if you do that all the time, just like stretching or mobility or taking a shower or brushing your teeth, you won't need the major help that I think you were referring to.
Sure, but Mark, you just said you have a positive connotation for three things that most people have a terrible connotation for. So how do I rewire my brain from something that has a negative pattern or loop from my experiences? Where do we begin that journey? What does it look like to do that? Because I also want to experience and understand what you just said.
The book that I'm reading right now is called The Magic of Believing. And belief is everything. It really is everything. Belief is, okay, let me describe the difference. Thinking, believing, knowing. To think something is like a passing cloud. There's many of those, right? Do I want dessert right now? Should I shower now? Should I reach out to that person? You know, motivation is a very finite resource. If you feel something, use it. Right below that is a belief. Belief is like a charged cloud. Now we're talking about somebody's religion. We're talking about their family. We're talking about something that they deeply, through repetition and emotional experience, they've built axioms of their psychological house on. And then beyond that is knowing. Knowing is where proof comes in, evidence comes in. I use this experience. I've been to Japan 3 times, right? So I have a different mental map of Japan than I did before I went there, or if I asked many Americans who have never been to Japan, right? They could probably point that they saw it on a globe when they were a little kid, but they don't have that knowing yet. So now the reason why that's pertinent to know as a pre-frame to answering your question is because values are more or less static. If you're an introvert, you don't value EDM concerts as much as a high extrovert who loves going to restaurants and going out and meeting new people and social engagements. Your personality and your values are relatively static. You know what's not static? Your belief system. And new information can change your thoughts through repetition and emotional experience can change your beliefs. And then you add in some evidence and proof in there, and now we're on to something. People that do not get what they want, which is kind of a definition for success or lack thereof, it's because it starts with a limiting belief. Now, this is where the compassion comes in. Limiting beliefs have one prerogative in your life: to keep you safe. That's it, right? So if I say to myself, I am not good at chemistry class, I will never be good at chemistry class. Do you think I'm working hard on my chemistry homework? Do you think I'm staying after to ask questions to the teacher for more? No, because it's just keeping me safe. I don't need to be vulnerable. I don't need to reach out. We have to be careful, not only what we say out loud, but what we tend to think and believe as a working document in our brain that we've just ran so many times. So the way in which therapy, stress, and help became words with positive connotation was having the experience by changing my beliefs first.
On the note of stress, because I think it's such a popular word to use to the point of maybe being overgeneralized, it has so many different understandings attached to it when it's said. What's the difference between healthy stress and the kind that totally breaks someone?
I'm going to go back to Gabor Mate, MD. I think he's a prize to this planet. He says that all trauma is stressful. Not all stressful situations are traumatic. You know, somebody goes to their car in the morning and they get rained on and they say, oh, that was a traumatic experience. Trauma means wound. Some wounds are bigger than others. Some wounds, even though the individual's 50, has never healed since they were 5. I'm bringing in the word trauma as we're talking about stress because understanding someone's wounds, especially the ones that are not healed, right? So if I had a cut on my arm, Jackson, small cut, usually tough skin grows over it. And if you touch it on the outside, it's just tough after a few weeks. But you also know individuals, when you ask them a question and it's tough to get in there, there might be something right behind that. There might be something just right behind that. So when I think about stress, I think about the word trauma. And the reason why is when you go work out really hard, you're actually bringing trauma to the musculature system, right? And then it has to repair and protein and all those different things, right? But when we talk about the word stress, it is one of the healthiest things when acute. It is the most harmful thing when chronic. It's just, I talk about this a lot. Dosage matters. Dosage matters, right? How often you do something matters, right? There's nobody I've ever met that wants to be side by side with a romantic partner 24 hours a day. It's too much dosage, yeah? There's no mystery in that, right? But also when it comes to working out, is 1 minute of working out enough? No, it's all about proper dosage, right? So I think that's why I'm fascinated by psychology and mental health, because to me, it's like the constellation of the stars. It's, to me, it's not X plus Y equals Z. It's simplex, simple yet complex. People are so complex. And I've been talking a lot about John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The reason why that's so important is if you can't take somebody at their word, they're so they're so complex behind that word that like, wow, there's a lot that needs to be open and unpacked there. So what I'm looking to do in this answer is just make things more simple to understand. And if you can look at a healthy dose of stress being a good thing, like Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron in one way, another human sharpens another human. That's important because that's stress. That's stress, just not too much.
Yeah. I think about a lot of the viewers that are for this show. As the producer, I'm seeing, understanding the type of people that are listening. And there are people who are not yet in a position outwardly that looks like a high performer. For example, you're a pro lacrosse player, you run a nonprofit with your family, you're traveling around. These are forward facing. He's doing a lot. He's probably, even if I don't know it, at a higher level in terms of how you operate. Then there's people who are not yet in that place, but are rewiring patterns, even though they're not there, to be the person that it takes to be able to carry the weight of the responsibility when they get it. Much like you had to grow into the person that could take on the things that you're doing. If God gave them to you 11 years ago, it'd be a lot harder to manage them today. So speak to those people in the context of mental performance and coaching when I ask, what separates high performers mentally from everyone else?
First of all, what you just said was really profound. So kudos to you. And I appreciate the compliment that I seem to, from an outside persona, to be operating at a higher level. I received that compliment. I appreciate it. The thing that came to my mind was Freud once said, beneath all anger is sadness. Now, I don't know if that's absolutely 100% capital T truth. It's worth considering, though. So the question I have for anybody that's listening right now, are you turning your anger towards yourself such that it's turning into sadness, or are you using your anger to serve other people? You said that individuals need to grow into. I think they need to grow out of. Now, one of the things that's fundamental, and I think it's Dr. K at MIT, he always talks about in one session with his clients, if he can have them understand that anger that's already inside them, let's use this, spark, flame, fire. Let's use that. If they don't turn it against themselves, but actually use it, just like Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. Use it to propel you to do something. That's amazing. I mean, Warner Brothers knows this. Anybody who creates a Marvel movie knows this. How? The hero and the villain have the same backstory. The villain says, the world was nasty to me, and I'm going to get it back. The hero says, the world was nasty to me, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen to so many people. So it's how you use your fire. It's how you use your fire. And who said it? I'm not remembering who said it, but they were talking about dirty versus clean fuel, And I'm always encouraging my clients to look at their fuel source. You can go to the gas station, fill up with 87 or 93. Right? What's the difference? They're both gasoline. What's the difference? Well, I think 93 has a little bit more clean fuel. It's not just anger, which anybody knows this. If you are working just off of anger, which is tied to insecurity, because the word insecurity means to care too much. If you're only coming from that fuel source, it's exhausting. And you'll have this when your head hits the pillow at night, oh no, oh no, I haven't done enough yet, right? That's the pillow test. When your head hits the pillow, is it, I am glad I did, or is it, I wish I had? And too many days of, I wish I had, you know that you're getting dragged and pushed around by your anger because it's too pointed inward rather than using it as a clean fuel source that's mixed with love and courage and faith and connection. That's a word that I was hoping that we would get to. And I just stumbled upon it as I was answering, because this episode will release during Mental Health Awareness Month. And the word mental is probably one of the biggest stigmatized words ever. If somebody was seen as mental, you went to the other sidewalk. You didn't just go to the other side of the same sidewalk. You went to the other sidewalk to stay away from somebody that was mental. To me, the word mental means focus. Emotional is feelings. When we talk about mental health, mental performance, emotional health, emotional performance, we're talking about how do you shift from your feelings to focus, using your anger to go get something, not just go get something, to serve other people along the way. The one final thing that I would go down is I had the privilege of being on USA Lacrosse podcast. And inside the world of lacrosse, there's also a wonderful foundation called Morgan's Message that's doing tremendous work to bring to the forefront mental health. I am a mental performance coach, and people ask me what's the difference between mental health and mental performance. And what I would say is it's all on a continuum, and we're going to have down days, we're going to have up days, and awareness of those ups and downs is mental health. Just in the same way you could be talking about your spiritual health or your relational health or your financial health. Just kind of awareness of where things are. Are they more fractured or are they more whole? Performance to me is the actions that come from the wholeness. Once healthy, once solid, then you can go and propel yourself towards higher performance. So being on that continuum, right? It's not just stopping at normalcy. Okay, I'm good. I got to a certain place. It's, as the Russian psychologist Vygotsky would say, going to the next zone of proximal development. And if you find yourself in the next zone often enough, you're in the zone and you're becoming better. And people watch you as you dance on a ballet stage, or you sing, at America's Got Talent, or maybe you're just at a wedding, and you're performing a talent that many people didn't know that it's your absolute love. And when somebody's in the zone, whether they're a speaker or a dancer or a chemist or a teacher, there's no place you'd rather be. You're paying attention to them because they are showing the light of human beings. So that's how I talk about mental health. They're not separate. It's on a continuum. And once healthy, it's about striving and going beyond that, which is totally opposite to being a human being. We want to survive and reproduce. We want to conserve our energy. We survive. We don't strive. And my encouragement to those that want to have a more solid, integrous, connected individual mental health is go pour into other people. And by pouring into other people, not from a place of fraudulent persona, but genuine performance to serve, then you find yourself getting outside of your own head, outside of your own way, and going and actually helping and giving. I guess the final thought would be this. The more we train our body, the more it does for us. The more we train our mind, the more it gets out of our way. And you find yourself in a much more peaceful state. And when you're okay, now it's, who needs me?
Thank you, Mark, for opening up, sharing with us more about yourself and why this month is so important to yourself, but also to who you speak to, who you help, and yourself.
Well, thank you. It's such a joy to work with you, and I'm so glad that you came out from behind the camera to ask such thoughtful questions.
Thank you, Mark.